How's it going at YWAM?
Pretty well. Yeah. So now we have extended 1 more hours. So we usually do from 9:30 to 12, but we have gone from 9:30 to 1 p.m. now for shower and for bedroom. And Thursday pantry is the same schedule. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, welcome to the Sermon Discussion Group, everybody.
Welcome. Thank you.
Welcome.
So Jeff, this past Sunday, you really went there. We had some technical problems, but I'd love to hear a little synopsis of what you spoke about, and then we can just dialogue about some questions.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the, I guess it was, if you're going to read the book of Revelation, there's certain aids or helps to reading it. And so we talked about how to understand the imagery of not just apocalyptic literature, but fantasy language, dragons, beasts, things like this, seven-headed monsters. So we talked about how to understand that. We also talked a little bit about something that we'll be looking at a little bit more on Friday, and that's the flow of hearing something and then turning and seeing something. That this rhythm or cadence happens quite frequently in the book of Revelation, where, like for example, chapter 1, I heard a voice behind me and I turned to see. We talked about the hearing and turning to see. Hearing refers to the first covenant, the Hebrew scriptures that they had heard read over and over and over. So he hears that, but when he looks and when he sees it, he sees frequently something very different. He hears the voice of many waters, but when he turns and looks, he sees 7 candlesticks. And he hears, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has prevailed. And when he turns to see what it is, it's a lamb, which was very different. They had been told in the Hebrew scriptures that the Lion of the tribe of Judah would be the ruler. But when he looks, he sees a lamb, a murdered lamb rising up. So we talked about, and then we just stayed focused on that throughout the duration of just exploring and excavating the meaning of lion versus lamb, the meaning of the lamb. And then we made application of that to our own lives of, conquering not by taking power from those that are in control, but by meekness and humility and forgiveness and just taking on the posture of the lamb. So we talked about that for quite a bit, and then just related that to how I think frequently we feel like we need to be more influential to make a difference in the world. We need to be more powerful. We need to have more education. We need to have read more books. We need to have, all these things that we think we need more of in order for us to overcome. And we talked about that that's not, when God came to us, he did not take on the posture of powerful, but of powerless. And he overcame through powerlessness. So we talked about overcoming through powerlessness.
So the title of your sermon on Sunday was The Rise of the Murdered Lamb. That's a pretty provocative title there, Jeffrey.
Yeah, in the Greek, we translate it slain, a lamb as it had been slain, but a better probably translation is murdered. And I think that's a better way of looking at the picture. In the Gospel of John, the throne, Jesus continually talks about the hour of his glory that's going to come, and it's enthronement language, glory, honor, it's all enthronement language. And you think that the throne is going to be him going through death, a resurrection, and then he will ascend to the throne in heaven. But that's not what happens. In fact, it's the throne is the cross. He takes the cross and makes that his throne. He rules from a cross. He
Wow.
rules death. He rules the underworld. He rules all the tyrants, whether they were the emperors or the Caesars or he rules all from a cross, and he subverts, right?
Yeah.
Subverts all human history from the cross. The resurrection is proof that the Father has vindicated him, vindicated his work. That was the work of the Father, but his work was the cross. Jesus's work was the cross.
It's so good. It's so good. Well, when you say the word murder, it kind of personalizes it too. Slain it's a tough word, but murdered is kind of like, that's pretty, I have to own that. I identify with that emotion of what it feels like to murder. Well, I don't identify with it. Oh gosh. Gios, did you have any questions from Sunday?
Yeah, but it was very interesting, and talking about imaginary and fantasy. Yeah, it's a really that's kind of topic, and that kind of revelation is very virtual for me, because it's a matter of about spiritual things. So I'm learning, and I really enjoy, and I'm absorbing. But yeah, it's makes me to grow my spiritual. That's the good things about that revelations, and I can really understand that it's a very hard and very core topic about revelations. I don't see much people talking of pastor or reverends or talking much about revelation, but this is a great challenge to dig into more about revelation, what it's really about.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Jeff, you said something on Sunday that I thought was interesting. That the book of Revelation is John's communique on hope and chaos. Okay, let's just process that from the traditional way that we view Revelation. I don't know that anyone that I've heard in the last, well, let's just say 40 plus years, has ever put the word hope and the book of Revelation in the same conversation. And for you to say that John, when he wrote it, it was about communicating hope in chaos, well, it couldn't be more relevant to the time we're living in right now. That's amazing. I blown away with that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if when we understand the context, the historical context that the book was written from and what it was written to, there's a really interesting letter that we have from the first part of the second century. I think it's 111 or 109 AD. So it's shortly after the writing of the book of Revelation. It's not too long after that. It's a letter from a governor up in just north of the seven churches of Asia Minor, Bithynia. And the governor's name is Pliny the Younger. And he writes a letter to the emperor of Rome, asking for some counsel and some advice. And the whole letter basically, and we have correspondence coming back from the emperor as well, but the letter is about how do I go about persecuting Christians. And so it's the first secular reading we have on what was going on between government officials and basically he says in the end, he says, I ended up torturing two Christian slave women, to get more information out of them. He says he accuses them of political crimes. Their crime is treason against the Roman government, because they refuse to worship Caesar as God. And so then he goes down this whole list. If they will recant 3 times, then and if they denounce Christ vehemently, and then if they go offer incense and they worship in the imperial cult, which would have been the Caesar, worshiping Caesar as the Son of God, and believing in the gospel of the Pax Romana, the peace that Rome brings, if they will confess that, believe that. And so what's really interesting in all of this is that you have the language that the evangelists, even the term evangelist, Evangelist is a political, it's a political term. It's a word for a messenger that went to declare the coming of a Caesar. And so they have preempted, they've taken language like gospel, euangelion, and evangelist, one who brings the angelos, the message. It becomes very, I guess, it pulls people, it helps us understand that there was a lot of persecution going on during this time. And so whether it was being thrown in prison or the women being raped, or all this was going on, which means that this book was being written to people that needed some kind of hope. And so you have to, it's written in, also has to be written in a way where if somebody were to pick this book up, they wouldn't, a Roman or a person would not understand all the imagery that's there. So, but it is filled with hope. The Lamb triumphs over the dragon. One, which we'll talk about this coming Sunday in chapter 12, the woman clothed with the sun beats the dragon as well. So it's interesting. And the dragon, of course, represents the political system, is Satan, and represents a political system that's influenced in Rome.
You had we shared some pretty provocative cartoon pictures with everyone on Sunday in the notes. And so that was fascinating to me. And I'll probably post a link to that inside the YouTube channel so people can actually go straight to those as well. But if I could just read this to you, and then the statement, did you already say the statement from Walter Wink, Jeff?
No, I did on Sunday. I read it, but I didn't say it just now.
So I'll just say that, and then we can comment on that, and then if you have another question, I'd love to hear it. If not, we'll tidy it up, and then we'll wrap it up. Walter Wink reminds us that the victory of the church over demonic power was embodied in the Roman imperial system, was not won by seizing the levers of power. It was won when the victims knelt down in the Colosseum and prayed in the name of Jesus for the emperor. That's a different mechanism for change, societal change, than perhaps even a lot of Christians take now, with wrestling power back versus kneeling and praying. And I would just love your thoughts on that. It's a powerful metaphor.
Yeah, so if you look in South America or anywhere where there's constant civil war, and there's a turnover of government and power. So the oppressed overthrow the oppressor, and then they oppress the former oppressor, and then the former oppressor throws over the other oppressor, and it's a cycle of violence. It never ends.
Right.
And who starts it? All these wars, go back for centuries, and it goes on and on. What Jesus kept saying, he told Peter, "Don't take up the sword."
Uh-huh.
Those that live by the sword will die by the sword. That's not how my battle is won. He told Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. I don't use conventional warfare. I'm not here to overthrow through conventional means. And so it was passive, it was passive resistance. I think a good picture of this is in contemporary culture would be what we saw with, my brain just went blank. But you get the same thing kind of with the civil rights movement. Not violently, but in a non-violent stand. Rosa Parks is an example of this. Just a non-violent stance, and not trying to beat him up, but just taking a stand for what's right in a non-violent way. And this, of course, was the way of Jesus. This is what he taught, that he was about overthrowing an entire system, not just one leader.
And it's not about the battle, right? It's like, let's take a systemic approach and take care of the war. We're not just fighting. And that's the thing, I think, that sometimes we are so short-sighted. We try to win a battle now, and then we don't think in terms of the longer impact that we'll have on a culture, how they view us as Christians, how they view us as followers of Jesus. We are combative right now. Don't take the nonviolent, almost approach of humility with prayer. man, we win the battle, but we might lose the war, you know?
Yeah, and the gospel is always about a kingdom of hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Not about legislating righteousness. It's not about getting your man in office. It's about entering into the heart and transforming the heart.
And right now in this season, especially as churches are navigating even like the pandemic and the shelters in place and how we've approached working in tandem with the community or working in opposition to, and how our approach here has been one of cooperation. And in other words, we are processing the fact that we are in this world, not of it, but we're called to serve the people here in the city. Mm-hmm. And credibility is raised when you have, to me, a much more, again, just the metaphor, not the metaphor, but the reality of the kneel and pray for as opposed to fight. All right. Gios, do you have a question? And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I have one real quick question, Pastor Jeff. As you mentioned about the dragons and the revelation about this political rival or system. So in this right now in our country, we have the most powerful country in everything. But what's really going on from your points of the revelations that the death, dying rates and people who are infected with this coronavirus has growing daily, number by number? What's really going on? And can you just have any answer for this?
Are you asking me as it relates to the book of Revelation, or are you just asking me as it relates to
yeah, from the book of Revelation or from your idea, or it doesn't matter, whatever it is. I would just
I don't see there being a direct link in the sense of like what's happening with this virus, the coronavirus, what's happening with that was somehow seen in the book of Revelation. I know some people are taking that position. I don't see that. What I do think that we see is there's pestilence, and we see there is death that happens in the book of Revelation. I think it's saying that if we're going to make a connection, I think we could say that, as long as there is history, the way that it is set up now, there will be pestilence, there will be war, there will be famine. These are the tools that the dragon uses to get people to comply with his kingdom, his rule, his control. And so, and there's been pestilence throughout time. What's happening with the current pandemic is nothing compared to what happened in 1918, nothing compared to the Black Plague, nothing compared to plagues and pestilences that have happened all throughout history. When we have some reports that up to 1/3 of the Earth's population were wiped out by plagues in the 2nd and in the 3rd century. What's happening now it's not 1/3 of the population. It's the last that I saw was like 0.0003% of the Earth's population. So it's not, I want to be very careful. I think but for those that lose someone, now here's where I want to be very clear. For those that have lost someone to it, it is the world, right?
Absolutely.
If we're just speaking in terms of numbers, it's not the whole world. But if you lose someone to it, it is your world. If you lose a mom, a dad, a son, a daughter, it's your world that's just collapsed, and it's something's just been ripped from you, right? And so in that sense, yes, absolutely, qualitatively it is. And I think you just have to be careful. We don't want to read COVID-19 into Revelation. John knew nothing about COVID-19, but what he did know is that there's famine, there's pestilence. He knew that existed in a world, and the dragon is at the root of all of that.
That was great.
Yeah,
all right. Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Gios, for joining. And I'd like to point everyone who watches this sermon discussion group to Friday, a special interview with Dr. Roy Fisher. Just a phenomenal thinker, speaker, and communicator. Just he and Jeff, as they walk through the book of Revelation, is powerful. You want to make sure you're for that. Secondly, we have daily devotions that are also dropping in this channel every day. So on Friday, there will be a live interview on Facebook and It's been dropped into the YouTube channel as well as the daily devotion. So have a great day, guys. And we love it. Gio, see you on Sunday. Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah. See
Saturday.
you.
Saturday.
Oh, gosh. And if you're watching this for sure, join us on Saturday. And Gio's, get the word out. We're having sidewalk communion. So right here on 1337, right in front, we're going to have an opportunity for people to drive by, serve communion, or walk by and serve communion safely and social space distance. And we're doing those communion elements that are pre-wrapped, so everything will be safe and sanitary. So
That'll be, we'll be open to do that from 10 o'clock in the morning till 3 in the afternoon.
that's right.
Okay.
All right.
10 to 3. Thank you.
Have a great
That was
day.
a great day. Yeah. Great meeting. That was great. Absolutely. Thank you for a
Thank you, Gios.
Thank you, Pastor Jay.